Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have one quick administrative announcement before we hand it over to our speaker to kick off the session. This session has been pre-qualified to support continuing education requirements for several cybersecurity certifications. If you are a member seeking attendance documentation, please be sure to scan the badge at the scanner located in the back of the seating area at the conclusion of this session. Scanners shut off 15 minutes post-session, so please get your badge scanned before networking with the speaker. Also note that to qualify for CEUs and CPEs, the session must run a full 60 minutes. That 60 minutes can include Q&A, so have the questions ready for the speaker to fill that time requirement. Full details of continuing education program are available in the TechNet Cyber app and conference website. Thank you, and now over to our speaker.
Thanks for that public announcement. That's great. So we've got to go an hour, guys. So I don't want to sit up here. This is kind of a stage thing unless you're doing stand-up. But we are at the last speaking engagement of the day, and there's two ways to look at that. Either they save the best for last, or this is the last, go through it quick so we can get the heck out of here, right? So we're going to take the high road and we'll say, okay, let's go through it quick and get the heck out of here, right? My name's Ed Zick. I'm with the DoD CIO, Information Enterprise Office, specifically the DoD Enterprise Software Initiative. I'm going to cover some things with you today. You've heard a whole bunch of things over the last couple of days here at TechNet. Of course, the administration is keen on efficiency, and ESI is all about efficiency, right? It's like a breath of fresh air for us. So ESI, I'll tell you, is not new. It's been around for a long time. There's been some perturbations to it, and actually I would tell you that the administration is picking up where we kind of left off in 18 and furthering the initiative of where we left off, and we'll talk about that through the CETA update. I'll go through some slides that'll update you, and then after the slides, we'll get into Q&A, and we can talk about some things that aren't on the slides that are happening. Right? We've all heard about software industry push. You've seen some of the Secretary of Defense's executive orders that have come out, and some of his memos that have come out recently concerning commercial first and being able to. But the caveat is, we want to pay what industry's paying, right? So the big thing, and treat us as one. So with that, let's get started. Okay. Let's see, was the one? Let's see, is it picking up over here? Yes, got to be close to the lectern. Okay, got it. Walking out of range. Or it's the last day and the batteries are all gone. Okay, okay. All right, here we go. Okay. Like I said, ESI is not new. It's been around since 2000. What does it do? Optimize IT category management within the Department of Defense, right? You've seen the category management policy come out from GSA. It's basically buying together, right? For the department, it's more power and buying together. We're basically managing over $2 billion in IT spend across the department through our vehicles and GSAs, right? And basically, our analysis showed, and this goes back to the CETA agreement, that we weren't effectively leveraging DoD's purchasing power, right? We're all buying separately. Everybody was negotiating their own agreements, and each one of them taking over a year to put in place with the services. So the question was, hey, let's bring that all together at the DoD enterprise level and negotiate for a department-wide agreement with common terms and conditions, right? Now, we initiated that in the the president's first administration in 2018, right? And to date, we have 3 of the 7 targeted that we were after. Now, we can go through why we haven't got all 7 yet. I can tell you we have agreements in place for most of the 7. but all of them aren't designated CETAs. And what CETA designation does is tell you that the agreement is mandatory across the department. That means we will funnel all the volume for purchasing for those particular OEMs through those contracts. Okay? We do expect CETA designation on 2 more OEMs that are coming up in 25. I can't tell you what they are. I'll just tell you that the spend is well over $100 million. So basically, we've got 6 OEMs that are in that category, as you might imagine. A lot of them run the OS on this particular PC and stuff like that. So that's one, and then there's a database one. Basically, ESI helps us with our category management objectives for the federal government in funneling through GSA. We typically, our agreements are off of the GSA vehicles that are out there. So if you're on GSA schedule, that helps you get promoted, to an ESI agreement. And then we'll discuss ways in that ESI can better serve the DoD customers. Okay, here's the timeline. Some of you all know Floyd Gross, who I co-chair the ESI with. He started this back in '98, so he's long-term. He's still there. He's, in fact, you might see him at a couple of other forums coming up. He's going to have the same slides. But the policy was buy together, buy as one power. Basically, back in 2000, they incorporated ESI into the DFARS, so it was mandatory for consideration. In 2018, during the first administration, President's first administration, we got to the CETA agreements, with Core Enterprise Technology Agreements, and those are codified in DoD Directive 8470, which basically says anything designated CETAs are mandatory for use for a particular OEM. We're not saying that you have to buy that software, but if you choose to buy that particular OEM, you need to use this particular contract. And that's been recodified in the recent memos that have come up with Secretary Hegseth, and of course it's reiterated in my leadership, commercial first. So with that said, outside of CETA, which there are about 7, ESI manages over 100 IT agreements spanning various software and hardware and services, right? So we basically line up the terms and conditions that are conducive across the entire department so that you don't have to negotiate the eaches with every organization within the Department of Defense. So it gives you a baseline to start, and then everybody can buy off ESI with common terms and conditions. All right. Again, we're managing over $2 billion in annual spend through the ESI contract. Includes 3 CETAs. All of it can be found on www.esi.mil. It used to be only CAC enabled. My understanding is you all have access to it now too. You all should be able to go in there and see who's under agreement. We're tracking a dozen of enterprise software agreements. We manage and track 6 agreements, and hardware, we're tracking 7 enterprise agreements that are supporting DoD, and we'll get to the list. DoD CIO does not have contracting officers up at our level, so we rely on the Navy as the executive agent to train and manage a cadre of contracting officers that are familiar with enterprise terms and conditions. We've also got funding resources set up so that they are able to contract at the DoD level. So, this gets into mission sets and, everybody being resourced to do within their particular component. The Navy has a special designation in that they can actually do contracting at the enterprise level for the department. So with that, What we're trying to do with ESI again is move from disparate negotiations, fragmented purchasing across the department to a consistent message for DoD-wide contracting. We've got highly variable pricing amongst all the organizations that purchase independently. We want to coordinate that together so that there's one price across the Department of Defense, whether that's through tiered pricing or multiple ways. We want to be treated as one across the department for going through the one agreement. And again, when it's fragmented, we had limited transparency across the department. What this enables us to do is see the products within a particular OEM that are being purchased, to see whether there's ability for either consolidation or at least finding out what the core products are across the department within that for that OEM. The DON was appointed the executive agent for CETAs. Those are our mandatory agreements. And so they are executing on behalf of the department those mandatory agreements that we need to arrive at. Again, working capital fund makes the funding for the strategic level easy. And of course, the DON is maintaining a cadre of experienced contracting officers that know how to negotiate at the enterprise-wide contracts, and not just the organization. Okay, these are advantages for our mandatory vehicles for the customer. We believe it simplifies contracting for the ordering organization by already having a ordering vehicle in place with common terms and conditions for both the government and the OEM. It makes sure that all the terms and conditions are consistent across the department, to include data rights, IP, and all that. And so it relieves the KO from having to negotiate those individually. Best in class prices. We believe that we can negotiate the lowest defensible price based on industry. We take a look at industry benchmarks, apply them to the volume we believe that goes through the contract, and negotiate for those particular discounts. And then, of course, best in class terms and conditions. Those are data transferability rights, licensing transferability amongst organizations, et cetera, are all written into the terms. And we believe that all of that simplifies the ordering, streamlines the procurement for the organizations out there, again, so leading to their ordering being faster than having to negotiate from the ground up, starting with the OEM. And again, we're maintaining software product managers that are responsible for each one of those OEMs, that are knowledgeable about those particular software OEMs that are out there in the department. Okay, and this gets into how do we support DoD throughout the category management process. Of course, we look for the demand signals that are out there. You'll notice that we only have 94 agreements out there for DoD, so not everybody is on ESI. It all depends on the demand signal and whether that particular product is scoped across the DoD. Sometimes you'll only have certain products that are bought by one organization, and it's a niche software, so we won't necessarily develop that particular OEM into an enterprise-wide agreement. So as we see the demand rise that goes across, then we approach the OEMs to see if they're interested in becoming an ESI agreement. So we determine sourcing strategy, whether that's going to be ordering vehicle, or in some cases we go to a full-blown JELA, which is joint enterprise, where it's basically a joint purchasing order at one time across the entire department, right? One big buy. So we'll talk a little bit about that. DISA is going to be our primary executor for joint enterprise license agreements. We're currently coordinating a memo on that across the department, which will designate them as the lead for negotiating joint enterprise license agreements. Again, negotiating terms, conditions, and prices. And then finally, finding out whether the contract needs to become mandatory, a designated core enterprise technology agreement, which is a mandatory vehicle where we push all the volume through it. Okay. We do price benchmarking to be used to identify lowest defensible costs, avoidance opportunities, is what we do. We basically use what our industry partners will use Gartner, some of the other folks to find out what industry is paying out there for particular products to make sure that our prices that we are getting are at least within range of those particular of what prices paid. And then if not, we go back to the OEM and we discuss, hey, what we're seeing DoD wide versus industry is not right. We're going to do something to correct or potentially renegotiate the agreement if it's way out. That's part of the things that the software product managers do when they're analyzing the contract. Again, it's all designed to identify lowest defensible price so that we can make sure that the DoD is paying what industry's paying out there. That comes straight out of the Secretary of Defense memo. It's like, hey, we should be paying exactly what industry's paying, right? Given the same terms and conditions, and I'll caveat that, right? So he didn't say that, but we all know that terms and conditions impact pricing, and so that's one of the things where the terms and conditions are similar, we should be paying the same price DoD should be as industry. I'll just leave it at that. All right, and then again, we use all the info out of our benchmarks to perform what a should cost should be when negotiating the contract. Okay, basically the ESI team has, we've had 20 years worth of resources available going back, on historical spend across ESI, the SOUP contracts, reports, and so we use that all to feed into what we're using to negotiate with the OEM. We've got best class terms and conditions. They're available on the website. You guys can go out there and download them and see what they are. So it's not like nobody's hiding anything, and so it's available. And then we've got a couple of tools out on the site that are available out there to the customers in DoD, and they're available. And we're also working in our C-Scrum illumination reports, which highlight. This basically goes back to how the software is being built, right? So some OEMs we have to take a look at to see where the provenance of the software is to make sure that there's security baked in and that there's no potential for something being developed that gets into DoD that we don't want. So that also informs when we take a look at OEMs for going into agreements. This talks about the website we have out here again. We've got training out there. We've got agreement section where we can go over that. You got an Ask an Expert where you can actually talk to the SPM in charge of a particular OEM and ask them details about the contract, terms and conditions, whatever you might have. You can search the agreements. We've got policies, and of course, we got price lists and ordering guides out there on DoDESI.mil. Okay, so that was the slide set. So let's get into what's not on the slides, right? So let's tell you, so what do we got? So we've been engaged with software inventory lately. You've seen some of that on the news. We're doing a full-blown software inventory for the department, which is being looked at for where we can find efficiencies across the department. You've seen the Secretary of Defense's memo saying that, hey, we're not going to pay any more than industry. They are going over contracts to see which ones they believe are inefficient, that need to be redone, or where they can save money. So we in the ESI have been asked to find what our licensing, we're looking at all the licensing positions across the department and find where we can consolidate, I won't say consolidate, but where we can bring contracts together, right? So the opportunity for potentially negotiating at the DoD level versus the organization pieces. And so this is where this applies. Down the road, we are looking at a potential software enterprise implementation plan, I think, that is going to address the Secretary's memo and tell you the direction we're headed. It's got the drive for direct agreements for OEMs, so to see whether they're interested. The one thing about agreements is it's not one-sided, it takes two, right? So, but what we'll be asking for, direct agreements where available. I know in some cases, the reseller does a lot for the OEM. They track some things and they do some financing depending on how the terms and conditions of the deal work out. So those will all have to be accounted for when they take a look across the board to see who can do direct and who can't. I'm sure that'll all factor in. We've got a memo coming out on joint enterprise license agreements. The DIS is being looked at as the primary for arriving at joint purchasing agreements across the department. So where we can get the joint buy together, they will be responsible for negotiating those particular terms and conditions. So you would ask me, so what's the difference between a JELA, a CETA, and an ESI? I would tell you ESI is the management mechanism. We have ordering vehicles that are basically BPAs. We've got CETA is a designation that says these are mandatory vehicles that you have to flow through these these contracts in order to purchase off this particular OEM. And then the joint enterprise license agreements are basically a joint buy, or what I would call a joint ordering, where you can get one or more organizations together to buy at the same time. Let's see. I think that's all the current piece. Any questions from the group on anything that we talked about? Sure. Okay. So you're talking about the number of resellers, is that correct? So my understanding is one of the things we do is we expressly try to limit the number of resellers because we want your best, right? So we want the ones that work with you, that have the letter of supply, and we don't want to get somebody that's in a garage someplace that's selling you. We want somebody that has providence to you, the OEM, and can speak for you guys, right? So I think that's why we tend, because you can go out to 50 different resellers, and it's like it's just too much for the contracting guys to use too. So one of our things is skinny down the resellers for that. Is there a reason you're asking for 10 versus 5? Right. I agree. That's one of the things we ask to do, right? Right. should be able to do that. I'm going to have to take a look at your. I'm surprised that you're saying this, actually, quite frankly. Yeah, that you're not able to do market research on ESI. So,
Well, it's our government customers telling us this, that they're
Okay.
not able to put out a market research request on ESI like they could with other contract vehicles.
I'd like to know your specific situation. Then
Okay.
I'd be happy to take that back. That just doesn't sound. My understanding is you should be able to talk to a software product manager, and this
Right.
is your government rep, right? And they should be able to tell you what they are, what the range of the prices paid for the volume they're bringing in through that contract.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Sure. Sorry, it said something about the recording.
We've heard discussions about consolidation of PEOs in this age of efficiency. Are you all tied into the enterprise PEOs across the services at the DoD? Is there going to be more of a role for you all to take on some of what they're doing?
So here's where this is the rub, right, with the PEOs, right? So they're functional, they're mission focused, right? What we're trying to provide is access to commercial off-the-shelf agreements, terms and conditions across the department, right? Regardless of the mission set that you're trying to fulfill, right? I think that the PEOs are still going to be necessary to integrate those mission pieces that are critical for what's being done. All we're saying is, if you're using commercial products within your PEO, we've got a DoD-wide vehicle that we're trying to set best pricing across the department for the volume, for the amount that we're buying, right? So you shouldn't have to go and negotiate your own piece with that particular commercial. But where it comes in is integrating that commercial COTS with other systems falls to the PEO to do. So that's where we kind of don't. We're just trying to put the best contracting vehicle in place for the commercial stuff. And then, of course, you've got the mission-specific stuff that just goes through the integrator. I will tell you the other thing we're pushing is integrators. The ODCs, we're going to be pushing to minimize the ODCs so that FAR 51 allows integrators to purchase off government, it's GFE contracting, right? So that'll be one of our pushes that we're going to go through. The thing that's different now that we didn't have in 18 is it's the contracting is waking it. Defense contracting, the KOs themselves, who are the warrant holders that say, well, I'm going to go in this direction, right? They're all, they're getting what I would call the squeeze now too. So it's like, hey, you need to go to these guys first before you go independent, right? So that's really the guidance that's changing now. So
Appreciate the information. I don't know a whole lot about ESI other than what you presented today, but I did have a question, maybe a little bit of a follow-on about market research and the capabilities of the software that
Sure.
you're creating vehicles for. You mentioned that you have analysis reports. Is that from a funding perspective or like a capabilities of the software?
no, so the capability will be up to the So we're just providing the best terms and conditions for the commercial. The functional is going to have to determine what software is best fit for what they're doing, right? So that still falls to the requirements holder, right? We're just providing a vehicle says, we believe this is the best vehicle across the department for you to use that gives you terms, conditions, and pricing with the volume that DoD is spending.
Gotcha, thank you. So if an organization's doing an analysis, they can reach out to ESI and get maybe a pool of vendors to participate in analysis?
We can give you for a particular OEM, we can help you with pricing for what we're seeing going through the ESI contract, right?
Okay.
For an OEM. But if you're competing two OEMs against each other, I mean, we can do that if both of them are on ESI, we can give you the prices that we're seeing for both of those, right? But you have to pick functionally on which one. They'll have to, if they're trying to do a capabilities piece on which one's better, that's left up to the requirements holder to decide which, because they have to decide their requirements and which one's going to fit, right?
Right, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we don't do the competition between the two OEMs. OEM.
Okay. Yeah, having the cost or a vehicle to from putting that into an analysis is very helpful. So thank you.
Right.
Yeah, can you quantify or maybe characterize what the demand threshold needs to be for you to put in place an enterprise agreement?
So, sure. So, in the case of CETAs, typically those run over 100 million annually in spend in the department, right? That's typically when we start looking at, okay, we're spending a lot through this particular OEM. We need to see if we can't put a vehicle department wide to go through. The other thing is breadth. If the amount of spend across the entire department. If you're only selling to one organization or two, then we're probably not going to pick you up unless you start to approach about 20 million plus or something like that. Then we'll take a look at and see whether we need to bring on a ESI agreement. One of the things that happens is we typically get approached and say, hey, we'd like to get an ESI agreement that'll help us, get on the page, and then we can start selling off the page, right? Typically, that's not how ESI works. We look to see the demand signal first, and then we put the effort into making it a breadth. So we have to see demand across the department is what it is.
Ed, with all the move towards efficiencies, are you also getting a requirement from leadership to consolidate or to save X percentage? Is there a requirement a directive that you're being given that say, hey, you need to take out X amount of costs?
I think that's going to the functionals, right? But we're told that, hey, you need to make sure that your contracts that you have in place, that you're advertising, are supporting that price piece, right? And one of those is if we're going to, first of all, is there a benefit to going direct for this particular agreement, right? Does it save any additional money? Whatever, do we need to renegotiate? So we've been asked to relook at all our agreements to say, hey, are we able to take a look at anything that's changing? You all heard yesterday that the FAR, they're going to blow up the FAR, right? I won't say, I didn't say blow up the FAR, but there's going to be some really change, and it's going to be coming down fast. So we'll be taking a look at those changes and seeing what applies to the existing agreements, as well as any new agreements that we have coming in. So, yeah. Okay. All right. What do we got? Holy cow. All right. She says at an hour. Am I allowed to release you guys? She's not here, right? So she's not counting. All right. All right. All right. Any other questions that we got out there? Like I said, what do we got? We got a couple of memos that are coming out. We got an implementation plan that's in the works. The GSA, yeah, the GSA memo. Didn't even talk about that one. The one, the consolidation and transfer to GSA, right? They're going through the perturbations on that right now. You all have heard about, OneGov up at the federal level, right? To me, that's federal ESI as far as I'm concerned, right? They're basically putting the contracts in place at the federal level to see if they can't get certain OEMs to go federal wide, right? And so the only thing with federal is the terms and conditions that are necessary to do that. I would say that they would be, it's so broad that there's just no way to cover it. We'll see. Anyway, we're going to work with GSA to see which ones potentially we can go for. Everybody, there's certain OEMs that everybody buys. And so what can we reach on a core set of products that we can buy at the federal level? The other is how does that translate at the GSA level? Because right now the funding still comes down in different lines. Title 10, Title 50, and it's all different colors of money, right? and how do you get that together? Or do they just apply it to the GSA, the GSA Schedule 70 and lower prices there, and then funnel all the volume through their Schedule 70 contracts, right? I think that's yet to be determined, but that's just from my foxhole that I'm looking at. We'll see what happens. So we've committed to working with GSA to see what ones we can do at the federal level, and that's where I got to leave that. So, all right, that's it. All right, guys, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Hope you all had great 3 days here, and weather's outside's nice. Too bad there's not a ball game tonight, huh? That would have been a nice way to finish up. Anyway, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. We're out.